Hello everybody, it's Dr. Natalie Horine here at Ignite Chiropractic, and I want to show you the relationship of what we see in x-rays and how that can relate to what you're dealing with as far as constipation, leaky bladder, sneezing and not having to worry about that you might leak a little or dribble a little, or you feel like you have to urinate all the time, you don't ever feel like you're feeling voiding, or you just feel like you have, I've heard people actually say, I've been told that I have the bladder control of a 5-year-old because they have to go to the restroom so often that they're never fun to travel with because of how often they have to stop. We see and we can suspect that's going on whenever we're taking a look at the pelvis or the hips. So when you're looking at this right here, this is your low back. Well, we see the rib cage coming off right here. The low back, and this is the iliac crest, or the tops of your hips right there, okay? Where you put your hands on your hips, this is what this is right there. What people don't realize is, and this is the sacrum right in the middle, it's that triangle bone that connects the hip bones into the center of right there. So what people don't realize is that whenever these two hip joints right here are tilted or out of alignment a little bit, like this one right here, we draw a straight line across this right here, and you notice that there's a deviation of 3.34 millimeters on this female's left side of her hip. Now you might be like, oh, that doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal. Well, it actually is, because anything greater than 1 millimeter is a significant enough difference to make everything that sits inside of the pelvis to be shifted right here. More specifically, let me remind you that here inside the pelvis, you have your lower digestive tract, you have your bladder, which sits right around this region, and you also have your reproductive organs. So in this case, it's a female, so the uterus would be around there, and the ovaries right around the same area where the bladder is and just above it. So if you have your pelvis that is shifted, in this case, the left side is lower than the right side, everything inside the pelvis is also going to be rocked off to the side there. So now imagine if your digestive contents in the lower part of the body there is now shifted, it could be putting pressure on top of your bladder, which if you have pressure on your bladder, then that sends signals to the brain to say, I have to go to the bathroom, even whenever you really don't have to. Or it's sending signals to the brain to say, I've got a release right now, I have a full bladder, when really you might not have a full bladder, which is why that you feel like you have to go so frequently, that it's not actually because you haven't relieved yourself of a full bladder, it's because things are putting pressure in areas where it shouldn't be putting pressure, and in this case it could be putting pressure right on your bladder, sending that signaling to the brain that you have to go. Same thing when it comes to the lower digestive tract, because you have the ascending, transverse, and descending colon, and that works its way out the other end right there. So whenever we see stuff happening in here and with that rocked pelvis right there, I can also assume that you might be dealing with some constipation issues. There are a lot of people that are dealing with IBS. I also can assume some of that relationship as well, because again, there's pressure that's being placed on the colon or being placed on the lower digestive tract there, which whenever their sensors are being pinched off right there, things don't flow as well as they need to. So then you could literally get backed up, and nobody's happy whenever you're backed up. It's not fun to not be able to travel for very long without having to stop to use the restroom, or do anything without stopping to have to use the restroom, or not using the restroom enough when we're talking about the opposite end, right? So you can tell that whenever we're just looking at the pelvis alone. Here's the other thing. We draw lines across the pelvis right here because they should be the same size, same width when we're looking at this. You notice it says 94.24 millimeters across the right one, but when we draw it across the opposite side, it's 82.57. It's less. So is it that this female has one pelvis that is not as wide as the other side? It's not actually that it's not as wide as the other side. It just appears that way on the x-ray because her pelvis is rotated. It's internally rotated. And whenever it's rotated like that, it appears like it's not as wide as the other side. Which then imagine what it does as we're going down. When you look right here, this is actually the pubic symphysis right there around where the actual part of the bladder and then the reproductive organs sit right there. This line that I drew, the center of gravity is right here. This line not only should follow straight along the spine, which this person also has their lumbar spine, which is leaning off to the left side. As you come all the way down, this line should go right down the middle of the pubic symphysis, and it doesn't. Why? Because the pelvis is rocked this way, so it rocks everything off to the right side like that. It's locked to the left, which makes it look like the pubic symphysis is off to the right. It's off center. And then not only that, but the pelvis is twisted. So when the pelvis is twisted and it's knocked off center like that, imagine what it's also doing into the hip joint right there. So you see how we can go a lot further in the information that we can gather about what we think is going on, but more importantly, why are you having those symptoms to begin with? Now, there could be other things that have led to that, but this is important to note that we want to make sure that we level out the pelvis, we allow the body to self-correct itself with neurologically based chiropractic care so the nerves can get the proper information so it can go to the digestive tract to let your digestive tract have the proper motility, to go to the bladder, to then go to the brain for the brain to know that I really don't have to go to the restroom as frequently as I think I have to, or I'm fully voiding when I am actually using the restroom. And then more importantly, this also changes the dynamics of the actual biomechanics of how you move as well, and the distribution of the pressure from one side of the lower half of the body to the other side of the body. It just creates this whole vicious cycle unless you stop it in its tracks to make sure that the nerves are communicating where they need to be communicating and the body is being held and distributed evenly and efficiently using energy in the body for you to do all the things that you enjoy doing. So again, I'm Dr. Natalie Horine. If you have any questions, feel free to ask more. If you know anybody that could be suffering from any of the things like leaky bladder, constipation, IBS, issues with running, going into the pelvis right there, are you wearing out one side of your shoe faster than the other shoe right there, go get checked. Go and see what's going on in your nervous system. Get your bones checked out and see what's going on within the bony structure that could be leading to a lot of the symptoms that you're needlessly suffering from. Feel free to contact us if you have any more questions. Have a good one.